Almost had some technical difficulties right here. Good morning once again. Very nice singing this morning by everybody. So, let me get my notes opened up. Okay, we're good there. Y'all good? Amen. All right. We're going to be in Mark chapter 2. If you want to catch up with me there. Last week, we started talking about evangelism a little bit. If you remember, we went through Isaiah 54 a little bit and talked mostly about enlarging your tent, not holding back, making yourself ready for what God can do. Asking ourselves the question, are we willing to grow? Are we willing to do the things that God would have us do? Okay? So think back up to that. Notice at the end of this verse, it says, for you will spread out to the right and to the left. Okay? If you prepare yourself and you prepare your heart, God will respond to that. If you make room for who He is and how big He is, God will respond to that. You cannot exhaust God. You cannot run out of God. You cannot use up God to the end of Him. There is no end to Him. In fact, the blessings, the provision, the protection, the salvation, you cannot outdo God. Right? All right, I got one or two amens on that one. So we'll see how it goes the rest of the message here. So let's talk about, first off, let me just say, this is a brief overview or look at what evangelism kind of is last week and today. Really, evangelism is not really that difficult to understand. Evangelism is exactly what Jesus instructed us to do when He told the apostles or the disciples at the time. He told them to go out into the world and make disciples. That's evangelism, isn't it? So basically all we're doing is going into the world and bringing them to Jesus, aren't we? We're bringing them and introducing them to God and His kingdom. So that's all there is to it. Let's not make everything so difficult all the time. It's real easy. We submit to God and let God be God. All right? Now, as we move forward, oh, by the way, I'll tell you, I bet y'all can't guess what I had for supper last night. We went over to, yeah, it was a fatted pig, but it was good. We went over to, what's that town next to Silva over there? Yeah, yeah, that's right. Y'all know the barbecue place over there. Yeah, we went over there. Some friends from the east came over, and they were staying over there, so we went to eat with them and had some barbecue, and we were there until they closed at 9 o'clock. All right, so we're driving back, and those of y'all that live over there know how long it takes to get over here, right? So here we are, new in town, and we say, you know what, let's take the Parkway back over there just to see how it is. What's wrong with that? So we were the only ones up there. Well, there was a car every now and then. And we got about, 50 or 60 miles and started getting a little foggy, which I should have expected that. I'm driving and I'm watching for bears and stuff run across the road. Plus I'm watching for the cliff that we don't want to run off the end of. And we're trying to, I'm just trying to be careful and just see how it goes. And it dawned on me that ever since I was about 20-some years old, I would always say to myself, if you're the only one doing something, you might want to think about it. That's how I've kind of lived my life, to make sure that I'm not being foolish about things. But it wasn't that bad. We made it over here. It took longer, and we knew it was going to take longer. We just wanted to do it. Probably won't do it again, but it kind of reminded me of a story that, y'all know who David Jones is, right, preacher? He was just here for your revival, that guy. Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's a great minister. And if anybody tells you any different, tell them to come and see me, because I'll straighten them out. He's a good guy. But he likes to tell a story, right, about this man. And I thought about this when I was driving, because I was thinking to myself, if somebody's up here broke down, ain't nobody going to stop and help them, because you're up there by yourself, and nobody's going to stop and help them. So he tells this story about this guy. He's driving late at night on a place like that, and there's nobody else around, and there's a hitchhiker, right? And so he picks up the hitchhiker and asks him, does he need a ride? And he says, yeah, and he gets in the car, right? And they drive. And they introduce each other to themselves, and they just keep going. And however long they were going. So what I want you to do is put a pause on that story right there. And don't let me forget to finish that. Because I might. But I want to finish that story because you need to know how it ends. All right? So, guy on a dark road late at night picks up a stranger. And they're driving. Okay? Moving on. What's that? I don't remember where he got it from. If you heard it, don't tell nobody. Don't let me tell it. All right, here we are, Mark. Mark chapter 2. First 5 verses. Mark chapter 2. What we're about to read is an example of what we studied last week. And it's a picture of who we need to be as believers as far as evangelism goes. All right? So just kind of use this as a picture for maybe like a vision or some place, some goal that we can set for ourselves. And if we're already there, then we can praise God, right? And we'll just ask Him to continue to increase that. But if we're not there, then all we have to do is ask God to help us with that. So no discouragement here at all. This is just, where are we? Here we are. Let's do this. All right? So when Jesus entered Capernaum, this is Mark chapter 2, the people heard that He had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. And He preached the word to them. Some men came bringing to Him a paralyzed man carried by 4 of them. I'm going to pause right there. I want you to see right there in the second sentence. It says, they gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. This is Jesus, right? Coming to Capernaum, and everybody came because they wanted to see Jesus. Notice they wanted to see Jesus, so they all came. They were busting out the doors. They were in the hallways. They were standing outside. They needed to enlarge their tent because Jesus was there. You see? That's what evangelism actually does. It's not good programming. It's not anything like good preaching. It's not anything other than Jesus present at a church that fills the place up. Right? God can use the worst preacher with the worst building and fill it up. And people can meet God. Right? So y'all are in luck. Because I'm probably not the best preacher in the world, all right? That's what keeps me preaching, by the way. Because if I thought about it any other way, I'd probably quit. Because I'm fairly certain that I'm not the best preacher in the world. But I've seen God do some great things with a lot of people who love God and just are willing to go. So y'all pray for me and I'll do the best I can, all right? But look at this church here, these people. It says they were in such large numbers, they didn't have any room left. But they kept coming. You need to look up Cane Ridge Revival. Happened over in Kentucky. Happened within this group of believers, the Church of Christ, independent Christian churches. That's who we are. It's our history. People came all over Kentucky and West Virginia and the whole area, and they filled the place up. There's 4 or 5 preachers standing out in the woods on tree stumps preaching constantly, taking turns preaching. They used the church house as a prayer room for the preachers to take a break and pray with each other. And everybody was there for days. And the only reason they stopped is because they ran out of food in the county. There was no more food for people to eat, so they all went home. You need to read it. Go study that. It's very interesting what God can do. God moved in a great way in that moment. And He can do the same in any congregation that lets Him be God and allows Him to be seen. Isn't that great? Isn't that simple? Isn't it real simple? To make disciples, to do evangelism, you just bring God into the world and say, hey, here's God right here. You want to know about God? Right here's where I find out about Him. Come with me. Right? That's why you need to be at revival. That's why you need to come to revival. That's why you need to bring somebody with you to revival. And if for some reason you got some reason that you're already committed somewhere else, you should send somebody in your place. Right? Because it would help them. Find somebody to send them, say, I can't be there, but you need to go. And they're going to look at you funny, and they might come. You don't know. You don't know until you ask. All right. Moving on with the rest of the scripture. Notice that there was 4 guys here. Some men came bringing to him a paralyzed man carried by 4 of them. So 4 guys carrying this paralyzed man to who? To Jesus. These 4 guys didn't try to do whatever they could do to make this man better. They didn't try to do whatever they could do to solve the problem. They took the man to Jesus. Right? That's our job. That's our commitment. That's our assignment. Bring people to Jesus. Let God have it from there. And whatever God does, we'll praise Him for it. If God doesn't do anything, we'll praise Him for it. Because He's God. Right? So it's real simple. Let's just bring people to Jesus. The hard part is if you don't know Jesus, it's kind of hard to do that, isn't it? I'm going to pause and let that sink in just a minute. Because everybody that goes to church or everybody that says they're a Christian, well, I already know Jesus. Do you know Jesus? Do you really know Him? Do you know who He is, what He's capable of? Do you know that He's God? Do you know that He's holy? And do you know that the power of Christ that lives in the believer is more powerful than anything in this world? Do you know that so much that you're totally given to that and you totally trust that with everything that you are? Because if you do, you're already making disciples. You're already doing evangelism. You're already bringing people to Jesus, and you may not even be aware that you're doing it. A lot of times people in your life, they might come to you and you might be having a bad time in your life, or somebody else might be having a bad time, and they say to you, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you keep going in the middle of all these problems. What's the answer? I don't know how I do it either, but Jesus helps me. He may not take it away from me. He may not make it better, but He gets me through it. And people need to know that. Because there's a lot of people living in this world, in a world of hurt, and they don't have any hope because they don't know Jesus. And if they just knew Jesus, it might not relieve any physical suffering or any other kind of suffering, spiritual suffering. He may not take the problem away, although He might. But bringing the peace of Christ into somebody's heart makes it all different. Isn't that great? I hope that's why we're saved. I hope that's why you're saved. Hope you're not just saved because somebody told you were going to hell. I hope you're saved because you know who Jesus is and you can't live without Him. Okay? That's evangelism. So then here it's the rest of these verses. It says, since they could not get this paralyzed guy, since they could not get him to Jesus, because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. And it says, when Jesus saw their faith, He said to the paralyzed man, son, your sins are forgiven. All right. Lots of things to look at kind of quickly. Here they go. They show up for church. They think they're on time, but they're not because everybody's already there and they can't get in. Now, you think about this is on a planning level, right? This is what they teach us as far as, not all of what they teach us in school, but some of this is what they teach us in school. If there's not a seat for somebody, they're probably not going to come back the next week. If it's full and there's no place to sit, most people will not come back because they don't feel like they're welcome. Right? So we'll always make sure there's plenty of room for new people, for visitors, right? That's just a thing. Well, there's no room here. They couldn't get in. Well, we better just go home then. That's not what they did, is it? Imagine we're standing here, we're sitting here just like you all are now, and I'm going through this sermon, tripping all through the points, and y'all are trying to figure out what I'm saying, and God's doing what He's doing, and somebody starts digging a hole in the roof. What are y'all going to think? I mean, you hear banging and you start seeing drywall come down and y'all are just looking, it's like, who's tearing up the roof? Somebody's going to get up. A couple of you are going to get up and run out the door and see what's going on, aren't you? Because somebody's tearing up the building. And it's not going to be the first thought in our minds that God is doing something. Is it? All these people are in this church, and these guys, they went up on the roof. They didn't just send a couple of guys up there to dig a hole. They went up there and carried this crippled man up to the roof. And then they started digging a hole, however they did it. Because they don't make roofs. They didn't make roofs the way we do. It's like digging a hole in the ground, basically. And then the next thing you know, these people are listening to Jesus, and here's these guys digging a hole, and I can almost see them getting offended and shocked that these people are tearing up the building while Jesus himself is teaching. Not even having a clue, not even realizing, not even noticing that there's a crippled man who needs Jesus. And there it is. There's the whole picture right there. That's evangelism. Whatever it takes to get somebody in the presence of Jesus. Whatever it takes. Do you think those men loved that crippled guy? You think they loved him? I would say they did. I mean, it's evident to me that they cared so much about this guy that they carried him however far they had to carry him. And when they saw the biggest obstacle that there could have been in their way, they made a way. And they didn't care what anybody else thought about it. They didn't ask for permission to go dig a hole in the roof. They didn't go check with the leadership of whoever owned the building. They didn't do none of that. They said, this guy needs to be with Jesus because he's got a great need. And we can't solve this problem, but Jesus can. So we're going to do whatever it takes. Y'all ready for that? Right? Because we can expand our building. We can expand our hearts. We can make room for God all we want to, but if we're not prepared to take people at any cost in the presence of Jesus, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. Now the truth is, every congregation just about that builds a building, whether it's a new building or an add-on, people come around to see what's going on. We could build a doghouse in the front yard and people will come over, hey, what's that about? They're coming to see what's going on, but they're not coming to see God. Right? It's not about building buildings. It's not about anything other than letting God be here. And letting God work in our lives so that people recognize that God is building something. And then they come and find out what is going on, what's happening with those people over there. They're acting strange. They're not like the other churches. They don't care what anybody thinks. So they come and find out what's going on. I'm so glad you asked, because I love talking about God. I love talking about Jesus. And you need to know him. Right? And then we just keep loving them and let God do the rest. These guys, they were up there. They dug a hole. They made a way. Notice when it says, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed, when Jesus sees our faith in these ways is when he moves in the lives of me and you and the ones around us. You ever ask the question, how come God doesn't let this guy get saved? How come God doesn't do something for this person to repent? Do you think that he wants to do something? Say yes. I can guarantee that God wants every person in this world to know him and to be saved by his son's blood. Guaranteed. It's in the Bible. Sometimes the reason that people don't know Christ is because they haven't ever met anybody else that knows Christ. I'm not saying that about anybody in here. It's just a fact. Something that we have to ask God. Today, I want to be your servant. Today, I want to go into the world and find as many people as I can and show them who you are. And I want you to help me do that. I want you to give me what I need to do that. Whatever. That's what the Lord's Prayer was all about. I want my daily bread. Protect me from my enemies. By the way, forgive me for not doing a great job yesterday. And I'll give you all the glory. That's the Lord's Prayer. It's all about making disciples. It's all about evangelism. Because you're on an assignment. You and I are on an assignment from God, and it's his way or the highway. In no other way but his way. Right? So why do we fight that? Why don't we just go and do it his way? That man was blessed. This crippled guy was blessed, not because those 4 men loved him, not because they carried him, but because he met Jesus. How he met Jesus is because they loved him and because they carried him. But because he met Jesus is why his sins are forgiven and why his life was changed. And the reason I'm saying that is because we can love people all day long and we can carry them on a stretcher for the rest of their lives, but if we never bring them to Jesus, it's not going to matter. Make sense? So it's really easy to me. We don't even have the option not to love somebody. It's just, okay, how do I love this person in a way that brings them to Jesus? Am I loving people in the way that God wants me to love them so that they'll meet him? That's evangelism. Jesus saw their faith, and I pray to God that he sees our faith every day. I pray that we are able to see the result of our faith in our lives, in our homes, and here in our congregation. Because it's faith that is what does the work. We're saved by faith, so why wouldn't the evangelism happen by faith? Everything we do is by faith. It's not because we know the Bible. It's not because we've figured things out theologically. It's not because we've been to college. It's not because of any other reason that we know Jesus. It's how somebody else is going to know Jesus. Right? That's why I know that God can use the worst preacher in the world to get the message out there. He can use the best preacher in the world too, if there is such a thing. So we're going to accept everybody, right? We're going to accept everybody. The scripture tells us right here in Colossians chapter 3 in verse 11, it says, "Here there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian or Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all." There are way too many people around this world and in the total history of existence that are picking and choosing who they want to witness to and who they want to bring to Jesus. And let's just not be those people. Let's just already decide, hopefully you've already decided, but let's just not be those people and ask God, how can I bring every person I talk to closer to you in any way? Even if it's just a little bit. Even if it's just you move them from A to B and their goal is to get to Z, and if you do from A to B and somebody else does from B to L, that's great because you've done your part, right? It's not our job to go out and get everybody saved. It's our job to present Christ to the world. God will do the rest. So it's everybody, anybody. Anybody could walk into the doors of this church, and we need to be prepared to make room. We need to be prepared to love them in whichever way God sets forth for us to do that. Right? So all we need to do is, in our prayer time, just ask God to help us to be sure that we're prepared. Let's not wait until somebody comes in the door to figure out what to do. Let's be prepared to do it. And by doing that, meaning we need to get close to Jesus. We need to be as close to God as we can be. We need to be so much in prayer that we recognize when God says do this or do that. We recognize when God says move in a way that loves this person or do something special for this person. Or lovingly extend some harsh love. Enabling people is not loving them. So we have to ask God to find a way to help them out of their problem so they can see God. Because if we just keep enabling their problem, then we become part of the problem. So loving people isn't always accepting everything that's going on. But we love them in spite of all the things that are going on, right? Because you can look in the mirror and you're just like, man, if God didn't forgive me and if people didn't love me regardless of who I am and what I do wrong, I'd be in trouble. I'd be lonely. Right? Always look past what's on the surface of people. Always look into their eyes and ask God to help you see what He sees. Right? Because what God sees is what He created and what He intended. And He's trying to get rid of all the mess on top of it. And that's true for every person in this room. And we praise God because of Jesus, all right? So Galatians says the same thing, by the way. You can look it up. Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. So we're accepting everybody. Everybody's accepted by God, so that everybody should be accepted. Well, you ever notice that people, I'm going to try to hurry up and get through this. We automatically judge people. Not like in a condemning way. We just make a judgment. First impressions, and then every impression we just have. As soon as we see somebody, there's an impression there. So these four, I'm going to tell you this quick story. These four people, an older lady, younger lady on a train, sitting in the cabin with a professor, an older professor, and his young student, right? The older lady's over there doing her knitting, and the young lady's sitting there listening to the professor talk to his student while the student's quickly and feverishly writing notes about everything that he's talking about. And they go through this tunnel, and something happens in the tunnel where they get shaken a bit. Next thing you know, they hear this loud kiss. Somebody got kissed. Then they come out of the tunnel, and the lights are back on, and everybody's still where they started. So the older lady's, in her mind, she's saying, I can't believe that old guy kissed that girl, and then she slapped him in the face. She thought she slapped him in the face. Well, the younger girl, she's like, I can't believe that boy kissed me. And then she thought to herself, it was nice. So then the professor's sitting there, and he's like, I don't know who kissed who, but I got slapped. So then the young boy, he's sitting there thinking to himself, he's like, man, I got away with kissing that girl, and I got to smack my professor. Point of that story is we take advantage of opportunities. Take advantage of every opportunity. Okay? Every opportunity. God will give you opportunities to do what He's called you to do. We need to get involved in people's life. Get involved. That means more than just say, hey, how you doing? And then bye, hi, see you later. When somebody, because sometimes you ask somebody how you doing, and then they take an hour to tell you how they're doing. And you're like, oh, didn't really want to know all that. It's true, isn't it? But if you want people to know Jesus, you need to get to know them so God can help you take them to Him. That makes sense to y'all? So you get involved in people's life. You share life with each other. Even people that you're not really connected to in community. This is where we get back to the hitchhiker. So they're traveling down the road. This guy, he picks up this hitchhiker on this road, right? And it's dark. Like really dark, like it was on a parkway. That was so dark, y'all. So we're driving, and this guy picks up this hitchhiker, and they drive, and they drive, and they drive, and wherever they're going, and they finally get where they're going a few hours later, and the guy he starts to get out of the car, and he's like, let me ask you a question. He's like, I appreciate you picking me up and everything, but how did you know that I wasn't some serial killer, and you just picked up somebody, and you're going to die? He said, well, I look at it this way. What are the chances of two serial killers being in the same car at the same time? Today, we live in a world today where we just don't know people. It's not like it was even when I was growing up. You could kind of halfway trust people, right? I used to ride my bike all over town, and nobody cared. Nobody worried about me coming up missing or something bad happening to me. Now you can't do that with your kids because you don't know people anymore. People aren't the same as they were. It's a dangerous place. But it doesn't change what we're supposed to be doing. At some point we got to trust God. At some point we got to be willing to suffer in some way or sacrifice in some way for the sake of somebody meeting God. Because even serial killers need Jesus, don't they? As much as we hate to say that, that's what is true. There's a bunch of people that have done some bad things in this world, and they need Jesus not more than you, the same as you. And we got to love them. We don't have to pick them up on the parkway in the middle of the night, but we still got to love them somehow. You can say a prayer, Lord, don't let his shoes wear out wherever he's going. It's hard to do things, isn't it? Because you don't know who you're dealing with. But if you know who God is, you'll be okay, no matter how it turns out. Because if you're standing before God one day because something bad happened to you, because you're trying to do what Jesus called us to do, okay, then you're standing before God, right? Hello? It's not what we want, but it's what it is. And I would rather stand before God trying to do His will than to have to stand before Him and explain to Him why I didn't choose to love somebody that He wanted me to love. I'm wrapping it up. I know we're a little bit long. We have desires and we have abilities. They're given to us by God. Our gifts, our talents, our personalities. We are who we are because God has allowed it. Even some of the rough stuff, God will use it if you turn it over to Him. Notice that God used an entire nation to bring Jesus to the cross. He will bring Jesus to the cross. Moses needed to recruit leadership so that he could manage all the people that had complaints. Right? That's why we have elders and deacons now. It's not just for the complaints, but he couldn't do it by himself. David, he led an entire army to be successful. It wasn't David going around conquering all the enemies. It was David and his mighty men and more people after that. It was because he had the favor of God. Because he knew Jesus. Now, Nehemiah, he didn't rebuild the wall by himself, right? He went and got all the people to do it, even when some of the people were against him. Then when Jesus came, he got 12 guys to start the church. One of them failed him. It took 12 men to begin what we're doing right now. Not because God couldn't do it another way, but that's the way God chose to do it. God created us to need each other and for us to work together, to do things for Him. Notice it took 4 men to carry this crippled man up on a roof and then drop him down in front of Jesus so that he could meet Jesus. One man, depending on the guy, probably could have done it, but not very many men could do that by themselves. 4. And they worked together, and they all loved Him, and it was all for Him. It was all for this guy to meet Jesus. It takes an entire church to bring people to Jesus. You're not in this by yourself. You're not doing it by yourself. You don't have that much pressure on you. When you feel pressure, it's because nobody's helping you. It's because you're trying to do something on your own. Come together and let's do it together. And watch God do some great things. Now I'm about to be finished. Evangelism is the work of the kingdom of God. That's all it is. So the questions are, what would you do to get somebody to Jesus? How far would you be willing to go? How dirty are you willing to get? Right? I was sitting over there just a while ago. This just now hit me. I was sitting right over there, and I looked down, and I must have dropped some coffee on my pant leg. And I looked down, I was like, man, how my pants get dirty? Because it's Sunday morning, and I don't want coffee on my pants. Who really cares? I get to come up here and talk about God for however long I want to. Y'all are like, no, you only get some of it. Y'all will probably get up and leave. I'm still going to stand here and talk, right? How dirty are you willing to get? How involved in people's lives are you willing to get? Because you know, by looking at your own life, that life is dirty. Can be at times. And you're going to get involved in somebody else's life, it might cost you something. It might call for you to do something that you're not comfortable with. What are you willing to sacrifice? I guess that's the song we're singing. Here's the thing. You have to know Jesus. You can't do anything for God without knowing Jesus. Right? You cannot make disciples. You cannot be a part of the kingdom of God without knowing Jesus, without being saved. It's one thing to know about God and about Jesus. It's one thing to even say you believe. But if your actions and your life don't match what you say, you're not saved. Starting with repenting of your sins, being baptized for the forgiveness of your sins. That's the way God planned it. So that's what we do. If you're there and you need to do that, come right now and we'll take care of it. All right? If you're okay, if you're good there, let's move forward together, right? And let's find people. There's so many people around here, it's not even funny. Except for on a parkway at 10:30 at night. I love y'all, and I know y'all love the Lord. Let's do this together.